If you don't know Daniel Foch, go follow him. We really had the same vision as soon as we met. And that vision was to start something for the next generation of real estate investors and professionals. We really wanted to start something that catered to the Canadian audience. Dan and I started this podcast together, started doing some deals together, started buying some properties together. We were about to stop. Let's do it for another month or two, finish out the guests we have, and then we'll reevaluate. 2 days later, Dan got a call from this podcast network called The Canadian Investor, and they were like, look, we got a lot of questions about real estate. We don't know what we're talking about. Do you guys want to start a real estate podcast under our umbrella? That's been going on for 18 months now.
What's poppin', everybody? Nicky over here, and today I am joined by Mr. Nick Hill. It's an absolute pleasure to be hosting him today. This gentleman has so many amazing things going on within his portfolio. Not only is he an expert in real estate and finance, he has his own portfolio in which he's scaling. He's got a rock star of a partner, Daniel Foch, and they've just built a really, really solid community that teaches you all about the fundamentals that you need to know, whether you're a beginner in investing or you have a real big level or high level of sophistication and you're scaling your portfolio. These guys got a course that absolutely kicks serious butt, and we're going to get into all that today. But without further ado, Mr. Hill, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I find it extremely interesting what you're doing, how you're doing it, the approach that you have, the style of content that you're putting out. Most recently, this community that you've built on School with Mr. Foch.
Yeah.
I think you guys have this like really unique approach that is working, right? And you could see the growth. You could see that a lot of people respect what your opinions are and what, facts you guys are spitting and what you're talking about. So talk to us a little bit about what that journey has been like, right? Where it started, where you are now. And then we'll get more into the community piece. But let's start with your perspective on the market and the style of marketing and the partnership you have there with Foch. And yeah, take it away, bro.
Yeah.
What should we be talking today?
a lot of ground to cover, a lot of places to start there. Maybe I'll start with like how Dan and I met and kind of like how our perspective and the market have kind of been running parallel for a little while now. So
yeah.
Dan, he's been on here before. If you don't know Daniel Foch, go follow him.
Yeah. Fochi.
I not to be confused with Dr. Fochi out of the States, but yeah, we met, I don't know, four plus years ago now. I had a background in commercial real estate and construction. I'd started several businesses. He had a background in real estate investing and commercial real estate. A lot of complementary skills. I was, if we're sports announcers, he's the data guy and the color commentator kind of thing. So I actually slid into his DMs on a deal he was working on, and we ended up trying to do that deal together. Ended up not working out, but we kind of realized, hey, we work pretty well together. We got some complementary skill sets here, and we really had the same vision as soon as we met. Okay. And that vision was to start something for the next generation of real estate investors and professionals. I don't know if you've ever listened to Bigger Pockets or if any of the people listening have ever listened to Bigger Pockets. It's a massive podcast and like real estate organization out of the States. So I listened to that for like 8 years, gym, on bike rides, whatever I was doing. I was just like, I've been listening to podcasts for a long time. And it was a wealth of information, but they had things like the 1031 exchange, or, there's a guy in Ohio buying something for 40 grand, puts 3 grand into it and it's worth 70. And I'm like, this stuff doesn't exist in Canada. Yeah. So it's not applicable to me in like my real estate journey. So we really wanted to start something that catered to the Canadian audience. Now, COVID hit. Dan started doing these things called co-video chats where he'd have people on similar to this, kind of like bootleg podcast style. And when we met, he was like, hey, do you want to start doing this with me? I was like, look, I wanted to be two things growing up. One was a race car driver, and I drive a Hyundai Elantra right now, so that obviously didn't work out. And the other one was a talk show host. I love talking to people and meeting people, and that's where I get a lot of my energy from. And I've always been a huge proponent of just surrounding myself with good people.
Nice.
Anyways, Dan and I started this podcast together, started doing some deals together, started buying some properties together. podcast. The first one around brick and mortar didn't really go anywhere. Lived in relative obscurity online, and a couple views here and there on YouTube.
So your first podcast,
The first one we started,
was
probably
called Brick and Mortar.
Called Brick and Mortar.
Okay, interesting. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, not many people do because it didn't really go anywhere. And we did it for like a year, man. And I mean, even if you're not getting views, a podcast is still a lot of work to produce, right?
Sure.
Booking the guests, coming up with the line of questions, and just the production, post-production, everything. So we did it for a while, made some friends, got some deals out of it, whatnot, but we were about to stop. We had like a couple more guests, and we're like, look, like other business starting to ramp up, our investments are starting to ramp up, the market was really hot. We're like, is this worth it to do anymore? And we're like, okay, let's do it for another month or two, finish out the guests we have, and then we'll reevaluate. And literally 2 days later, Dan got a call from this podcast network called The Canadian Investor. They cover like stocks, bonds, capital markets.
Okay.
And they were like, look, we got a lot of questions about real estate. We don't know what we're talking about. Do you guys want to start a real estate podcast under our umbrella?
Nice.
We're like, well, would you look at that timing wise, right?
Out. Yeah,
So we jumped at the opportunity, had no idea what we were getting into. Started this podcast, took a totally different approach where we didn't have guests on, and it was just heavily research, data-driven approach to everything. So like news, charts, industry thought leaders and like industry like titans of industry. What are they doing? What are the lessons there? Like investing fundamentals. Every Colliers and CMHC and all the reports that come out, we distill them down and present them on the podcast. So an immense amount of work goes into each one of these episodes. Anyways, that's been going on for 18 months now. We hit over 1 million downloads several months ago, which was huge for us.
Nice. That's huge, bro.
Yeah, it was
for a Canadian podcast. That's big,
yeah. So I was just on the Pals podcast with our mutual friend Ricky.
Yeah,
and he was like,
Ricky.
Pretty Ricky. Yeah, he is pretty. Yeah, guys in Hawaii right now playing pickleball for free. And shout out to Ricky. Yeah. And anyways, I didn't really realize how big it was until we started looking and asking other podcasters, and we're like, no, that's growth, which is frustrating because he goes to show the American market. If you had 1 million downloads in America, you're normal. If you got 1 million downloads here, you're huge.
Yeah.
Anyways, the podcast really propelled things in our lives in a different direction. We've since built businesses and like national referral networks across the country. So we're doing deals, like we've done deals in none of it, like coast to coast to coast kind of thing. So,
right.
And I think the success of it has to do with one, I mean, obviously, the boost from the guys who've got a massive, like they get 250,000 downloads a month. These guys, they're massive. That's the Canadian Investor.
Yep.
So if you're interested in stocks, go check that one out. But just the way that we presented the information, kind of like a no BS approach, slightly bearish undertone, but like very precautionary, really just presenting the data without an opinion attached to it, and focusing on investing fundamentals. I think that cadence and that way of presenting the information allowed us to gain the trust of a lot of people quite quickly, because we're not out there peddling bullshit, right? We're there telling, not that a lot of people were, but some people definitely were, and that's why a lot of people look at realtors and landlords and mortgage agents as having a negative connotation to it, which is really unfortunate.
Right, like they're steady in bull mode, right? Like it's always time to buy.
It always goes up,
right?
baby.
Yeah. No, and like that's true, right? And there is a lot of truth to that if you look at the 100-year linear graph chart and whatnot. But to go to your point, right? It's just like people get it. It's like, okay, I get it, but like bring me into the bowels of what this really looks like. Break it down for me.
I want to
explain
understand.
It. I want to understand more than it's always time to buy.
It's not just like, don't worry about it. Trust me. Lever up.
Yeah. And listen, this is, and we're those guys, right? Like we're in a big way, we're loud in a tasteful way, but we always have more of an optimistic, of a bullish, of a, encouraging people to invest into the market, right?
For sure.
But
for sure.
Can totally respect gentlemen like yourselves who take it to a whole other level, in really breaking it down and delivering straight goods to these people. You know what I mean? And that's why, like, we're fans of your movement. I'm always, complimenting Fochi and giving him shout outs because we had him on the pod a couple of times, right? So it's nice to see, right? Because it's not being done a lot, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And like, let me be very clear here, like, long term, like I'm bullish as well, and just because like I'm bearish on certain markets doesn't mean I'm not bullish on Canadian real estate overall or certain investment classes. Like the whole time that the market's been kind of crashing and burning, we've been in acquisition mode and have been, we're landlords and investors as well.
Yeah.
So like I do believe that real estate is a great investment. I mean, like it makes up like 95 or 98% of my net worth, right? I got like a couple of grand in Bitcoin, and that's about it, right? It's just all real estate. So I do truly believe in the asset. I just think that, just like with stocks, I mean, go watch The Big Short, right? Like it's just people try to make things very complicated and almost put up like a paywall, but like it's like a knowledge wall between the experts and the rest of the public. And it's like, okay, you can't do this. You've got to trust us.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah, that is very true for a lot of it. But like, I think a lot of it comes down to education. And I know you guys do a ton of that as well, right? You got the podcast. You're always hosting different groups in here, and like teaching people the right way to do things. So for me, as long as you're doing that, and you're not hiding behind the the old myths that real estate always goes up and it's never a bad time to buy and all that kind of stuff, you're out there doing God's work.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. And talk to me about, okay, so now you guys have not only, built this community online on the social media platforms, and you have a strong following, right? And people really appreciate the content you're putting out, especially because we are in a bear market, right? And you guys are one of the bigger voices and faces of understanding that side of things. And I love the way that you put it, right? Like, a little bit of an undertone with a bearish perspective, but you still keep it very non-biased, right? Is the best way to put it.
100%. Yeah.
Now, and it's working for you right now, and I'm seeing that and I'm loving it. And I go, this is an awesome play. But what I really think was brilliant about the overall is you pulled it and tugged it into a community. And now the way that you're able to monetize off of that community when it comes to entry fees, subscription fees, and how you have these people eating out of the palm of your hand, that was the play, right? That would make all the sense in the world, because no matter which way you twist it or turn it, and we're big on the socials too, right? And we're going hard, right? And like there's like direct call to actions, there's ClickFunnels moving in there's a lot of like ads where we'll tippy toe around the subject and do more lifestyle stuff. So we've hit it from so many different angles. But let me tell you that sometimes it's very, very hard to justify the ROI that you're getting on it, other than building the brand equity and the personal brand, right?
For sure, yeah.
But when the community move happens, right, and now it just lights up for you the way that I'm sure it has most recently, but I'd love to hear more about it along with the audience. I was like, boom, that's the move. Brilliant. They got them in their wheelhouse forever, as long as they continue to deliver this amazing content, and they're making a beating all across the board. So talk to us about that, Mr. Hill, and tell us why you're not driving a McLaren and you're doing it on one truck.
Because I spend all my money on real estate and building the businesses. That's why.
Okay.
Don't live beyond your means. Don't live beyond your means. That's the investment 101.
There we
I'm
go.
still young, and hey, listen, I'm a car guy again. Like,
Yeah.
For a Ferrari or a Porsche 911 GT3 RS is in my future at some point.
There you go.
But not until the houses I own can pay for it.
Love it. Passive income.
Passive income
support
and
that lifestyle, and a very modest one at that.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and I just try not to like let lifestyle
trying to
creep.
look a little greasy if Nick Hill from the Canadian Investor was whipping around.
That's what I mean, right? And like,
talking about the asset class being real estate.
It's so funny because when we were launching the course, like Dan and I were like very, very hesitant, and I'll tell you how we got to that point, but we were very, very hesitant to do it because, and I'm not going to name any names, but let's just say there's been a lot of news recently about gurus, and for those people that are listening, not watching, I'm doing gurus in air quotes here, real estate gurus and other people online that have crashed and burned, that have had, $100,000 in the bank and $80 million loans on their portfolios and vacant portfolios and people running away from JV partnerships and stuff. And even before all this shit went down, and this has happened in like the last 2 months here. So like 2024 has been a tumultuous year already for real estate investing and investors. The social media game is funny. and we were trying to, like, Dan's very serious. I try to add a little bit of flair, a little bit of comedy to my stuff. And when we initially decided to finally do a course and build a community around what we were doing, we were like, okay, we started thinking, we're like, yo, let's rent like a Lamborghini or a McLaren or something like that, and put like the rented from sticker on the back, and then pull up and be like, do you want a Lamborghini like me? Like, all you got to do is invest in real estate and all this shit. And then they're like, it's like zoom in onto like the rent me side, like with the phone number and whatnot, just to, like, as a big parody as to like, don't fall for this shit, right? Like, I mean, you know, people that are using that kind of lifestyle to be like, hey, invest $10,000 with me and you can be driving a Lamborghini. It's like, no, like we wanted to be the opposite of that kind of thing, right? And really lean into it. We never ended up making the video. It's harder to rent a Lamborghini in the middle of winter when we launched than I thought. Yeah, long story short, the course in the community kind of came around. It was honestly by accident. Like we had where we are now. We didn't know that that's where we were going. We knew that we want to get somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But like the podcast really changed it. So as I said, when we launched at number one, stayed in the country. It was nuts. Stayed there for a couple weeks, and we've really just started growing. Now we've got about 70,000 downloads a month just on Spotify and Apple. And we started to get all these. We encourage our listeners to reach out to us over email or Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever it was. We started to get all these questions, and I'd do my part and hop on the phone with all these people. Right? I must have spent like 1,000 hours on phone calls in the past 2 years. And the frustrating thing for me was I had this one touch point with these people, and I'd never talked to them again.
Yeah.
It'd be like, hey, Nick, thanks so much for
your brain.
Let me pick your brain. I got this situation, or hey, I want to invest in the next like couple weeks or couple months or couple years. What do I do? And I'd give all this consulting and counseling and mentorship to these people, and I love doing that because I think mentors are extraordinarily important. I've sought them out in every industry and every business and everything I've ever done, and I wanted to return that favor. I wanted to put that back out there, right? So I started to do that, and I know Dan was doing it too, and kind of got to a point after, and then we started meetups, and we started doing meetups across the country that are, again, for free. We've got like over 2,100 people going to like 18 different meetups across the country, second Tuesday of every month. We started just doing all this stuff, and we're like, there's people that want more from us, and like we want to give them more, so how do we do that? So that's when we were like, okay, do we start a course and community here kind of thing? And we're super hesitant because I find a lot of coaches and whatnot and in the real estate space super cringy, to be honest with you. There's some really great ones, and but there's some really bad ones, if I'm being brutally honest here. And I think that's not just real, that's across the board, right? There's bad drop shipping coaches, okay? There's bad success coaches. Exactly, right? But like, I'm obviously very aware of my industry, and you are too, and I'm sure you would agree that some people out there are just teaching the wrong things, in my opinion, or teaching very risky or high leverage things. So we were like, how do we embody what we stand for, which is that like prudent approach to real estate investing, and like build something around it? So we came up with the name Realist. So you're not a pessimist, you're not an optimist, you're a realist, and that's how you should invest. Built out a bunch of great content, started having like experts come on, and essentially, we've got this growing amazing community now. So
content meaning courses.
Content meaning courses. So what we did is the first thing we did is we did like a 12-step roadmap. So it was like 12 hours of content and then probably another 10 hours of question and answers afterwards. Everything. And this is from more of a beginner's perspective, but also like people that own maybe one or two houses that are trying to level up to that next one. All very investor focused, but we've actually had a lot of mortgage agents and real estate agents and contractors and people that touch and feel real estate but maybe don't invest but want to. We've had them come in, so not only they can do it for themselves, but they can assist their clients.
Amazing. Absolutely.
So we cover everything from like how to pick a market, what demographic trends to look for, where to find that data, how to calculate your gross rent multiplier, your NOI, and your cap rate to figure out if it's a good deal, and then what kind of calculations you want to be running for what kind of return metrics are important to you, cash flow versus capital appreciation, and then all the way through the mortgage process, how to negotiate, what kind of terms you want to look for, fixed, variable, and then how to make sure your property cash flows so you can rental wash it and use that to get to the next property.
All the fundamentals.
All the fundamentals, and that's really what it was. Like, let's build something like almost real estate school, right? Like, this is real estate 101. Like,
Yeah.
if you want to learn about real estate investing, this is the whole roadmap.
what it was, yeah.
And then so from there we started to build
Simple too,
it's
right?
pretty simple stuff when you
Yeah.
look at it, right? I mean, again, it lives behind this like curtain of like, I don't know what's going on back there, just like the stock market or just like a lot of other things which have been made to seem very complicated for the rest of the world, and like the
Yeah.
people in it are like, yeah, this isn't that crazy
Right.
as long as you understand the fundamentals, and that's what we've tried to do
and break it down.
and break it down.
And you guys have been very good at that. You've
Appreciate
been
that.
very good at breaking things down and delivering it to the general public and having it be like, they feel not intimidated by it. They feel that this information is welcoming, right? And I get that because I don't come from a financial background. I don't
Yeah.
come from a real estate background. So when I first got into this industry, I was one of those guys. I was very intimidated by it. And a lot of the people in the industry, you know, don't have that way. Not that they don't want to, but they don't have that skill in understanding how to break it down, kind of dumb it down, and just deliver it to you step by step by step by step
100%.
and walk you through
Yeah.
it, right? So brilliant.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, look, I got to
Yeah.
give credit to Dan. I mean, Dan's got a.
I was gonna say let's put Foch on FaceTime. On
Yeah.
the podcast.
I think he's actually doing another podcast right
Is he?
now.
Yeah.
Of course he is.
Okay,
right?
okay, yeah.
A couple podcasters can't stop talking. Yeah, like I appreciate that, man. I mean, look, I think Dan and I've had a lot of business partners. I've had a lot of business over the years. I know you have too. And bad business partners are horrible.
Yeah.
And good business partners are incredible. And Dan and I are very good business partners. And again, it goes back to that complementary set of skills where he's probably one of the sharpest guys I know. He would deny it, but he is. And his skill is being able to look at several different things that are happening in the economy, especially in real estate, analyze them and formulate an opinion. Now, sometimes that opinion is up here, and a lot of people don't understand it, and not even a lot of people don't even need to understand it. So, like, what I've been really good at is being able to understand what Dan's saying, and break it down and dumb it down, right? Dumb it down for me to understand, and then dumb it down for everyone else that's listening to understand. And I think that's where the good dynamic comes into place, where we can speak to like the investment bankers and the people that own thousands of units that listen to us, right? The economists and that kind of stuff. And we can also speak to the people that are trying to buy their first or second property that are like, I think I get it, but I need another explanation for it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've been able to kind of speak to a lot of people, a wider
Good.
audience, which has been
Good.
great.
Beautiful. And it's I think no, not I think. I know it's going to continue to go really well
hope
for
so.
you guys because of the fact that, and it's a beautiful thing that everyone is becoming pretty well versed in the real estate space.
It's hilarious, eh?
But,
It's crazy.
but they're not getting licensed, and they're never going to know half of what you forgot, an expert like yourself.
Yeah.
However, they're going to know enough to be comfortable to allocate the majority of their investment dollars towards it because it's just almost become mainstream, right?
It has, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's not that it's not that these other spaces, hold a different level of sophistication. I'd say it's just so not as many people have talked about it, not as many people have become confident in it, and it hasn't really spread like wildfire the way real estate has. So I feel like you're at the very beginning of that happening, and you're going to see a lot more upside from it because they're going to be pretty well versed in it, but then to take it to like the next level in which they're going to need to if they want to maximize the potential of their investment dollars and not make some stupid mistakes in paying for a subscription in a course like that. You're going to save like so much money in regards to decisions that you're going to be making that could be so costly, compared to what your subscription fee is and what your member fee is, and that's where smart investors are going to see that there's so much value there, right?
I really appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
Two things there. One, the funny thing is you're right. Like, 4 years ago, no one knew what the Bank of Canada was or what inflation targets were supposed to be or why interest rates matter, and now everybody does, right? Like literally everybody, everywhere I go, people are like, hey, can I ask you that? And I'm like, I prefer to, I can't talk about real estate literally all the time everywhere I go, but you know, it seems to be everything everyone wants to talk about. So it's funny. It's definitely a time and a place in Canada, and I'm grateful that, you know, we are able to kind of ride whatever wave this is. But again, you know, it's funny for people from the outside are like, oh, this, you know, these guys are successful, blah blah blah. But Dana and I have both been starting businesses and working for like 15 years towards this kind of stuff, right? And you have too, as a business owner, right? I mean, like, it takes time to get there.
It really does.
The other thing I'll say on like the coaching piece is, you know, a lot of people are hesitant with coaching, and as I said, there's a lot of BS out there. But I know you're a proponent of coaching. You know, we just spent $30,000 on a coach for us and for our business.
Yeah, all day.
And it's been a huge move. And outside of like official coaching, if that's something you're not ready for, my advice to anyone listening is go and find mentors. Like mentors and just other people doing what you're doing. Figure out a way to stand out and make yourself worth it for those people to spend time with you. And it'll propel your career. It'll you know, they can be part of your power team, whatever it may be. But that's my biggest thing. If you're not ready for coaching, start with mentorship, but go and seek out wisdom from people that are doing things that you want to be doing.
So such a big takeaway, 100%. And never stop. Right?
Never stop.
Like,
no, because you're not stopping growing, right? So like, why would you stop?
And I remember when I was first seeking out a coach, and then I plugged into the program, because I'm coached on the life side and the business side, but the first coach that I had, and he's still my coach till today on the life piece, he was always being coached. And at first I was like,
my coach is being coached?
Yeah. And then now I'm just like, fucking right.
He better be getting coached.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's this whole space that is amazing. And I totally agree with you, man, right? Like, it's really about who you surround yourself with. And if, to go to your point too, if you niche it down and say, okay, well, what do I want to be doing? And who's awesome in that space? And who's offering up coaching in that space? It's the move all day, every day, right? And people ask me about, you know, has there been an ROI on that? And I said unquantifiable in regards to the ROI. I wouldn't even be able to give you something that I'd gauge it with.
Priceless.
You know what I mean? Priceless, right? So, I definitely, you know, agree with you on that. So what's next? Right, we know you guys are kicking butt. You're scaling your own portfolio. You're helping out on the real estate side, on the financing side. You've got this community now that's got the fundamentals down packed, and you're educating the Canadian investors who really want to learn more and invest their time on understanding the space a lot better than they do as of right now, which is amazing. Those are all pretty great things.
Yeah, thank you.
What's next? I mean, I know you're going to Italy in 2 weeks, but I'm talking in a year, 2, 3 years.
You know, it's this is something that I've been practicing a lot with my goals over the last few years, is to have big goals, but leave them open. Because if you had told me a year ago where I'd be today, if you told me 4 years ago where I'd be today, if you had told me 4 years ago where I'd be last year, you know, it's something that I'm always working towards, and I always like thinking about. But like, I'm not putting like hard concrete goals into my life anymore, because I'm just pushing all things forward and essentially going with the flow, but in a very specific direction. And that direction right now is just, very simply put, growth across all platforms, right? Growing the social media content and having more calls to action there to get involved in the community. Growing the community is probably our main thing right now. It's really special. We've got some like absolute rock stars in here. Nice. We've got people that have been investing for like 25 years that own like a couple hundred units. We've got people that are building MLI Select CMHC products across the country. We've got like an expert grant writer for CMHC. We've got a bunch of builders and people that own Mix, and like, it's just and then we've got also people that are like your buddy is in it, and he's literally like, we're helping this guy buy his first property.
Nice.
That's a really big push, create more content for that. And like, you know, we're at we only launched a couple months ago. We're at over 50 members now. The goal is to get that in the thousands, and really to have like the biggest and best community for real estate investors and professionals in Canada. You know, what's next is just keep on being like, I want to keep on being on like the forefront of like a lot of these changes, right? So when MLI Select came on, we've been talking about it for a while. Now we're getting big into like the DADU and ADU space, like looking at building up financing products for that and sales channels for that. What I've realized that I'm good at is essentially just being like top of funnel and aggregating and bringing really good people together across the country. So it's just going to be more of that, bringing the right people together in every province and every major city from an event standpoint, from a networking standpoint, and really to like at the end of the day have like try to have an actual impact on what I would consider likely the rebuilding of this country's economy through housing over the next decade or two.
Beautiful. That's awesome, Nicky.
We'll see.
Love it. Love
We'll
it.
see.
Love it. And thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure,
today
man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and what would it cost? It was some awesome insight, and I look up to you. I see what you're doing, and I no, truly, I'm not. You
guys can't see me blushing
here, right?
on
Yeah, I look up to you, and I say, this is awesome, authentic content that we need more of, and you could tell that there's many people gravitating to it, as they should, because it's good stuff. You're a gentleman, not only good at what you do, but an absolute gentleman. And like I said, thank you for coming on and spending some time with us today. I'm sure you would have had many other places to be, and you're back to back to back. But yes, thank you for that, Nick.
No, man, it's an honor and a privilege to be here. And again, I got nothing but mutual respect and admiration for what you guys are doing across all platforms. So sincere thank you. And hopefully we can do more stuff in the future together.
Absolutely, brother. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of What Would It Cost? You just heard it from the man himself, Nick Hill. I was looking forward to this one, and I was growing out my mustache so that I could match Nick's. But the wife wasn't making love to me anymore. She felt that I would.
We had a whole skit planned. I guess we should just tell the skit now because we're not going to do it at this point.
Yeah, tell the skit now. Tell the skit. We're going to do a little mini mic series with Nick, but the skit's out the window now.
It was supposed to be like
happy life, but tell him, Nick.
It was supposed to be something. I mean, loosely, it was supposed to be something like, "Hey, like I need a big mortgage. I have a lot of money to spend. I'm looking for a guy named Nick." And like, okay, well, we've got a couple of them here. And like, well, he's Italian. And it's like, yeah, he's got a mustache. And then Nick would have a mustache as well, and we both pop our heads out and fight over the deal. But now he doesn't have a mustache anymore, so looks like I get it.
Nick Hill gets the deal as he should. He's going to get you to the finish line with an absolute white glove service and all the education to go with it. But again, Nicky, tell the audience where they can find you. And guys, I highly, highly suggest looking into his community and what he's up to, because they're amazing things.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, brother. At my buddy Nick on Instagram, so you add me, we're buddies. And realist.ca is the course and community. We've got a bunch of free stuff in there. And then if you want to learn more, just book a call with us and we can tell you all about it.
Very cool. All right.
Awesome.
Say hi to Fochi for me.
I will.
Take care, guys.